December 3rd, 1944. Hürtgen Forest. The kind of cold that doesn't just bite. It burrows under your skin and lives there. The trees stand like skeletons, stripped bare by winter and war. A dirty fog drifts between them, swallowing sound and shape. Artillery murmurs somewhere far off, steady as breathing, a reminder that death is never far away. Hidden behind the ruins of a farmhouse, an M4 Sherman waits in silence. Inside the turret, a young gunner, Harlon Vickery, presses his eye to the scope of a 75mm cannon. But something is wrong. The tank isn't facing the enemy. Its turret has been cranked all the way around, pointing backward. His loader shoots him a nervous look. "You really going through with this backward setup thing?" he mutters. Harlon doesn't respond. He barely blinks. Frost collects at the edge of the sight. His hands hover, calm and ready, listening for what others would miss. Then, movement. Shapes rising from the mist. 3 panthers. German armor. Brutal, confident monsters of steel. They advance in a column down a mud road, unaware they're being hunted. They think the battlefield ahead is empty. They're wrong. Harlon exhales. 1 shot. The Sherman roars. Fire erupts from the barrel. A beat later. Impact. The lead panther bursts into flame, pieces of armor spiraling into the air. The other 2 slam to a halt, stunned. Inside the turret, the loader gasps. "Holy hell, Vickery! First shot!" But Harlon isn't celebrating. He's already shifting aim, tracking the second target. To him, this isn't luck. This is a plan. A strategy no manual ever written had dared to suggest. Turn the tank backward, fight like a sniper, vanish before they can shoot back. They called him crazy when he suggested it. They aren't laughing now. This is how a quiet farm kid from Kentucky rewired the rules of armored warfare and turned a Sherman into a tank the enemy never saw coming. Before he became the man who stunned a German tank column in the Hürtgen Forest, Harlon Vickery was nobody special. At least that's what people thought. He grew up in Whitley County, Kentucky, where the land was quiet and life was simple. No war machines, no armored tactics, just endless fields and stubborn old tractors that broke more than they ran. Harlon learned to fix those tractors with his father, a man of few words and hard hands. His mother taught school at the little brick building down the road and believed her son would leave the farm one day. She just didn't know it would be for war. After Pearl Harbor, like so many young Americans, Harlon didn't hesitate. He enlisted, not for glory, but because he believed someone had to stand up. The Army shipped him to Fort Knox, where he trained with the Armored Division. There, instructors noticed something unusual about him. He wasn't loud, he didn't show off. He didn't try to impress anyone, but he had steady hands, sharp eyes, a brain that refused to fire a shot until the math made sense. While other trainees yanked triggers and prayed they hit something, Harlon was measuring distance by eye, estimating wind drift, timing reload speed. He treated every shot like a problem to solve, but the truth was, no one noticed him. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. He didn't brag. He stayed in the background, quiet and overlooked. That changed when he landed in France in August 1944. Normandy had been cracked open. The Allies were moving east toward Germany, but it wasn't victory. It was a death march through hedgerows, forests, and ambush country. And in that brutal new phase of war, Harlon was introduced to the machine that would define his story, the M4 Sherman tank. Fast, reliable, easy to repair, but thin-skinned and undergunned. German Panthers and Tigers could rip through a Sherman front to back before its crew even spotted them. Tankers had a nickname for it. The Ronson. Lights the first time, every time. If you were going to survive inside a Sherman, you didn't do it by being brave. You did it by being smart. And that was exactly the kind of soldier Harlon Vickery was becoming. In war, ideas don't get people killed. Bad ideas do. That's why nobody wanted to hear Harlon Vickery's. His Sherman crew had been together for 2 months, long enough to trust each other with their lives. Their commander, Staff Sergeant Gene Corbin, was a Chicago man with a cigarette always stuck to his lip and a philosophy carved into his spine. Drive, shoot,
survive. Everything else is noise to him. Harlan's quiet thinking looked like hesitation. To Harlan, Corbin's rushing looked like suicide. German Panthers were slicing through Shermans in seconds, and charging straight at them felt like walking into a firing squad. So one night, while cleaning the 75mm cannon after patrol, Harlan spoke up. "What if we set up the tank backward?" he asked. His loader, Private Mike Rizzo, snorted. "You mean fight in reverse?" "Not exactly," Harlan said. "We park facing away from the road, spin the turret around. If we have to escape, we don't need to turn. We just drive forward and disappear." Corbin stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "That's the dumbest damn thing I've heard all week," he said. The conversation died right there. But the idea didn't. While the others slept or smoked or gambled to keep their minds off dying, Harlan filled a notebook. Sketches of firing positions, firing angles, wind drift calculations, armor penetration diagrams. If the Sherman couldn't win head-on, it would have to fight like a sniper. Stay hidden, strike once, never get hit. They called it hillbilly logic. They mocked him, said he was trying to hunt tanks the way a squirrel hunts deer. Sit still and pray something walks in front of you. The laughing stopped the day everything went wrong. A nearby Sherman was ambushed on patrol, hit by a Panzer IV at point-blank range. The shell tore through the turret, no survivors. The wreck burned all night, lighting the trees like a funeral pyre. The next morning, Harlan didn't ask for permission. He and Rizzo slipped away during a patrol and set up exactly the way he'd imagined. Tank reversed, turret backward, hidden in a pocket of trees overlooking a clearing. They waited. Hours passed. Nothing but wind and static and distant artillery. Then, movement. 2 German motorcycles scouting ahead. Too small to waste a shot on. Harlan followed them in his scope anyway, tracking their motion. For the first time he knew, not guessed knew, that his setup could work. When they returned to base, Corbin chewed him out for leaving position. But Harlan didn't argue, because he knew something Corbin didn't. This wasn't a theory anymore. It was a weapon, and the enemy was about to find out the hard way. The Hürtgen Forest wasn't a battlefield. It was a graveyard pretending to be one. A twisting, claustrophobic hell of splintered trees, hidden mines, booby traps, and enemy artillery that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Even veteran soldiers called it cursed ground. By mid-November 1944, Harlon Vickery and his crew were thrown right into the center of it. Their Sherman, call sign C113, was dented, mud-choked, and scarred from weeks of shell fire, but it still ran, and that made it valuable. Orders were simple. Hold a vital supply route near the town of Schmidt. Simple orders never meant simple survival. Every bend in the narrow forest road could hide a German 88mm gun. Every ridge could hide a panther waiting silently like a steel predator. The men slept little, spoke less, and scanned every shadow like it wanted them dead. But while most crews just hoped to get through each day alive, Harlan had something else, a plan. His first test with the reverse turret proved the shot was possible. Now he wanted more than survival. He wanted control. He studied maps, ridgelines, and narrow passes where tanks would have no choice but to slow down and expose themselves. He wasn't just fighting. He was hunting. So when word came down that a lone panther had been harassing supply lines west of Schmidt, firing once and disappearing before artillery could retaliate, Harlan didn't hesitate. Corbin smirked and said, "Still think that squirrel-hunting tank trick of yours works?" Harlan just nodded. "Fine," Corbin said. "You get one shot. Blow it, and we go back to doing things my way." They rolled out before dawn and backed the Sherman into a nest of fir trees overlooking a narrow trail called Call Trail. The turret pointed backward, silent and waiting. Fog settled thick over the ground. Every breath turned to frost. The forest fell silent, a hunter's silence. Then a rumble. A shape emerged from the haze. Broad turret, slanted armor, panther. Harlan didn't wait for a clean shot. Waiting gets you killed. He judged the distance in a glance, made a 2-degree elevation adjustment, and fired. The 75mm round drilled through the fog like a thrown spear. Impact. The panther erupted in flame. A hatch burst open. Crewmen spilled out, burning shadows in the mist. Kill confirmed. Long range. One shot. The Forest had a new rule: don't assume a Sherman is running away. Its gun might just be pointed at you. Headquarters didn't believe the report at first. A Panther knocked out by a single Sherman at long range, in fog, without even being seen. But Corbin backed him. Rizzo backed him. The wreck was found. The backward sniper setup wasn't theory anymore. It was war, and it was only the beginning. News travels fast in war, not through official reports, but through whispers. By nightfall, every tank crew along the line had heard some version of the story. Did you hear about that Sherman gunner who nailed a Panther from cover? Yeah, they say he shot it backwards. No way. Nobody hits a Panther at range with a .75 recon found the wreck. Turret blown clean off bullshit. Swear to God. They're calling him the ghost gunner. Most didn't believe it. Some said it was pure luck. Others said it had to be artillery. But by morning, nobody was laughing anymore, not after the confirmation came in. The Panther wreck was real. The entry hole was clean. The firing angle didn't lie. Harlon Vickery had done it. Even Sergeant Corbin, who once called Harlan's idea the dumbest thing he'd ever heard, had changed his tune. In the after-action report, he finally gave it a name: Vickery's Vantage. Unorthodox? Yes. Reckless? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Headquarters didn't officially approve anything. Military brass hated anything that broke doctrine, but they didn't ban it either. That was enough. So Harlan tried it again. 2 days later, his crew set up in another hidden position off a forest track near Kommerscheid. Just before dusk, they spotted movement: 1 Panzer IV and 2 half-tracks escorting German infantry. Harlan waited. Breath steady. Scope locked. Fire. The Panzer vanished in a fireball. German infantry dove for cover. The half-tracks swerved, confused and blind in the trees. By the time they knew where the hit came from, Harlan was already gone. Sherman escaping forward out of sight. Back at camp, the mood shifted.
Rizzo started calling their tank the Kentucky Rifle. Even Corbin cracked a smile. Hell, he said, maybe that backwards thing isn't so dumb after all. No medals, no promotions, no speeches, just a growing realization among tankers. The battlefield had changed, and nobody saw it coming. Harlan's tactic wasn't just survival anymore. It was a movement to something new. A Sherman that fought like a sniper. November 26th, 1944. The day the forest roared. The Germans launched a savage counterattack along the Kahl Trail, hammering American lines near Kommerscheid and Schmidt. Infantry were pinned by machine gun nests dug into the hills. Mortars cratered the roads. Artillery burst in the treetops, raining wooden shrapnel like knives. Harlan and his crew were ordered to hold the southern ridge of Kommerscheid. No reinforcements, no air cover, just a handful of Sherman crews and cold, tired riflemen hanging on by their fingertips. If we lose this ridge, Corbin told them, we lose the whole valley. Fog poured in before dawn, thick enough to smother a man. Harlan positioned their Sherman behind a low stone wall. Again, the tank faced away from the main road. Again, the turret was reversed. Corbin stared at him. If they hit us here, we've got nowhere to run. We're not running, Harlan said. We're shooting first. The ground trembled. Then came the sound that made every Sherman crew go silent, a deep, metallic growl. Panthers. 3 of them emerged from the mist, fanned out with infantry support. They were hunting, methodical and precise. They expected Americans to meet them head-on. They had no idea death was sitting off to their flank, waiting. Harlan dialed his sight. 700 yards. Fire. The first shot hit low, smashing the drive sprocket of the lead Panther. The tank lurched and died, tracks jammed, it burned from beneath. The second Panther fired blindly into the fog. The blast rocked C-113, showering them with stone fragments. Rizzo jammed another HVAP round into the cannon. Harlan already had the next shot lined up. Turret ring, weak spot, squeeze, boom. The round punched through armor and ignited ammo. The turret of the second Panther lifted clean off in a column of fire. The third Panther found them. Its turret turned. Harlan's stomach sank. They were exposed now. "Move!" he yelled. Corbin gunned the engine, but the treads spun uselessly in the mud. The German gun locked on. They had seconds. No cover, no escape. Then, a blast from behind the Panther. Another Sherman had arrived, drawn by the smoke. It fired again and again. Crossfire. The Panther exploded. Silence fell. 3 Panthers destroyed. C-113 still alive. For the first time in the war, Harlan's hands shook. "That," he said quietly, "was the shot I was afraid of." "What shot?" Rizzo asked. "The one where you're already dead, and you pull the trigger anyway." That day, Harlon Vickery stopped being just a gunner with a strange idea. He became a problem for the Germans, for armored doctrine, and for anyone who believed Shermans had no chance in a tank duel. The battlefield had just been introduced to something new, a Sherman that fought like a sniper. In war, rumors die fast, but results don't. And Harlon Vickery was getting results. After Kammerscheidt, tank crews across the 28th Infantry Division and 20th Armored started whispering his name like a battlefield myth. "You hear about that backward turret guy?" "Yeah, the one they call Kentucky. He killed Panthers without getting hit once." "No way. Ask around. They say he picks shots like a sniper. Some crews wanted to try his method. Others swore it would get them killed. Not because they doubted his success, but because it broke every rule they'd been taught. Tank doctrine was simple. Face forward, stay mobile, keep firing, overwhelm the enemy. Harlan was doing the opposite. Sit still, stay unseen, shoot once, disappear. To many commanders, that sounded less like tactics and more like suicide, especially against German 88s and Panther guns that could turn a Sherman into scrap in 2 seconds flat. But numbers don't care about doctrine, and the numbers were piling up. In 3 confirmed engagements using his backwards setup, Harlan's crew had destroyed 5 German tanks, 2 Panthers, and a Panzer IV without taking a single penetration hit. Shermans weren't supposed to win duels like that, yet he did. That made people pay attention. Some officers were intrigued, others were threatened. One, Colonel Bennett, dismissed the whole idea during a briefing. "Turning your turret backward is a great way to die facing the wrong direction. This war is about movement, not hiding in bushes like cowards." Word of that comment reached Harlan. He didn't flinch. "With respect, sir," Harlan replied, "cowards don't wait for Panthers to get close." The room fell silent. After that, everything changed. Quietly, unofficially, tank crews were given permission to try non-standard defensive turret positioning, the Army's neat way of avoiding the words Vickery's backward sniper trick. Before long, other crews began trying their own versions of it. A crew from the 77th Tank Battalion used it to survive an ambush west of Gay. Another team used it to destroy a Panther stalking a crossroads near Wassenack. One Sherman crew even painted Vickery Special on their hull in tribute. The movement had begun, but Harlan didn't care about being copied. He didn't want a name. He didn't want glory. He cared about not dying and making sure other crews didn't either. At night, he cleaned his gun barrel himself. He logged every shot angle in a battered notebook. Distance, elevation, penetration result, ammunition type, terrain notes. He studied tank duels like a hunter studying tracks. He wasn't just a good gunner anymore. Harlon Vickery had become a tactician, and his idea was no longer just survival. It was evolution. By December, Harlon Vickery had become a quiet legend in the Hürtgen Forest, not because he wanted to be, but because he kept surviving when others didn't. But every legend in war carries a price, and Harlan was starting to pay his. Winter crashed into the forest like a hammer. Snow buried the wrecks of tanks. Rivers froze into jagged knives. Frostbite stole fingers and toes before bullets had the chance to. The trees were full of ghosts, and every day the forest seemed to swallow more men. Sherman C-113 wore the scars of survival, dented armor, welding burns, black residue from past fires. No one bothered repainting it anymore. It didn't matter what it looked like. What mattered was that it still fought, and so did Harlan. But he was changing. He didn't flinch at artillery anymore. He stopped reacting to shrapnel exploding nearby. Sleep became something other people did, but what weighed on him wasn't fear. It was the silence after every kill. After each perfect shot, there was a moment, one breath, one heartbeat, where everything went still, and in that moment, he would see it in his mind. A German crew scrambling to escape burning steel. Men his age, men who didn't make it home, men who had families too. He wrote home to his mother. Every shot I make saves us, but every shot means someone else never gets to go home. I don't know what to feel about that anymore. Rizzo, once the jokester of the crew, stopped making wisecracks. Corbin grew harsher, more protective. He'd seen too many crews vanish in seconds. None of them were the same anymore. Harlon started taping a small photograph inside the turret. His little sister, Lila, 8 years old, smiling in front of their family tractor. Her hair was in braids, her face smudged with grease from helping him fix the engine. "Something to remind me what I'm fighting for," he said. And still, he pushed forward. Still, he adapted. Near Bergstein, he took a position on a slope and used elevation for the first time. A German Tiger rumbled along a frozen road below. Most Sherman crews would have backed away and prayed. Harlon did the math. One shot, rear engine plate, catastrophic kill, no celebration, no chest beating, just a cold fact. The backward sniper tactic worked, and now even Tigers weren't safe. By now, the higher-ups had stopped questioning him. They didn't officially endorse what he did, but they kept sending him forward anyway, not to lead the charge, to shape the battlefield. Kill zones, ambush lines, terrain traps. The brass kept calling him a gunner, but he wasn't just a gunner anymore. He was rewriting how Shermans fought, and war was finally starting to notice. When the snow finally melted in the Hürtgen Forest, it revealed more than wreckage and shell craters. It revealed what war really leaves behind. Not victory, not glory, but stories. Stories of men who refused to die the way the enemy expected. One of those stories belonged to Harlon Vickery. He never had a rank higher than gunner, never commanded a company, never got a medal anyone remembers. But he changed the battlefield anyway, not with orders from above, but with a simple, dangerous question. What if I turn the turret around? He proved that survival didn't always come from heavier armor or bigger guns, but from thinking differently. He showed tank crews that brains could beat steel, that the Sherman didn't have to be a victim, that tactics could rewrite fate. The Army didn't put his name in any official report. They buried what he did under phrases like non-linear turret positioning and asymmetric armor doctrine. But the tank crews who came home didn't speak like that. They said, "He showed us how to fight smarter." By January 1945, his reverse turret sniper tactic had quietly spread beyond the Hürtgen line. Crews began scouting like riflemen, setting traps instead of charging head-on, firing not first but best. But Harlon never saw how far his influence reached. After surviving 3 near-death hits, including one that obliterated a Sherman right beside his, he made a decision. He asked to be pulled off the front line. Not because he was afraid, but because he had seen too many good men burn alive inside steel. He had proven what he needed to prove. He went home. No parades, no speeches, just a quiet train ride back to Whitley County, Kentucky. His little sister tackled him the second she saw him. His father handed him a wrench. His mother set another plate at the table. That was all the welcome he ever wanted. He never wrote a book, never called himself a hero, never told people he changed anything. But if you walked into the Vickery place in the 1960s, you'd see one thing on the mantel, a spent 75mm shell casing, polished, empty, silent. If you asked, he'd just smile and say, "That's the one that let me come home." War is often remembered by numbers, tanks built, battles won, enemies destroyed. But stories like Harlon Vickery's remind us that war is shaped by decisions, quiet ones, calculated ones, the kind that change everything. He didn't win because he had the strongest tank. He didn't win because he had the loudest voice. He won because he dared to ask a question no one else would. What if we look at the battlefield differently? And by turning his turret backwards, he moved the whole war forward.